Marshal Yin's cold smile was not born of malice, but of calculated confidence. He was the sword of order, and Shingai was the flaw in the cosmic balance. "You forced my hand, wandering god," Yin stated, dropping the pretense of the heavenly seal. "A mere suppression will not suffice." He snapped his fingers, a sound that, paradoxically, echoed like thunder between the silent jade mountains. The hundreds of jade serpent guards snapped into a new formation, their obsidian armor glowing with an interconnected blue light. This was not a passive defense or a power channel. It was a ritual of spiritual architecture. "The astral Meridian lock," Yin whispered, his voice resonating with ancient binding power. The air around Shingai solidified instantly, not physically, but spiritually. Every single meridian point on his body was targeted. Shingai felt the immense pressure of the entire Celestial Court's authority attempting to bind his cultivation, not suppress it. It was a net woven from celestial law itself, designed to freeze the kinetic flow of his power, making the armor of transcendent sorrow an immobile statue. The binding was immediate and excruciating. Every movement Shingai made required exponential effort. Like swimming through liquid iron, he could still feel the crushing psychic weight of the sorrow trapped within his armor. But he could no longer channel it externally. "This is the true purpose of the Jade Serpent Guard, Shingai," Marshal Yin explained, floating forward without effort. "To create an environment where the laws of the Celestial Court are absolute, your power is based on rejection. Mine is based on control." Shingai roared, a silent, internal explosion of rage and grief. He used sheer will to wrench his left foot free of the binding, cracking the volcanic dust below. The Star Eater blade vibrated fiercely in his grip, but it was too slow.
Astral Meridian lock was achieving its goal. Paralysis.
Yin raised his hand, gathering a bolt of pure, devastating energy, a lethal strike aimed not at his spiritual core, but at the neck, the one place the armor couldn't fully protect. Shingai knew this was the end unless he evolved. He could not fight law with power. He had to fight law with concept. He closed his eyes, ignoring the pain and the imminent attack. He dove deep into the armor of transcendent sorrow. The armor was not a shell. It was a spiritual engine, built from the aggregated grief of the world's most tragic river. For a millennium, Shingai had absorbed all sorrow, all regret, all pain. He had internalized the tragedy of his fate: absorption, defense, transmutation. The three core principles of the wandering god. He had never progressed to the final principle, transmutation, turning infinite passive sorrow into finite active vengeance. Inside the core of his being, the spiritual river, usually dark and flowing, began to boil. He pushed the accumulated sorrow not outward, but inward, focusing the immense condensed psychic pressure onto a single, ethereal point. He was weaponizing the trauma, condensing the emotional weight of 10,000 failures into a single, needle-sharp spiritual projectile. Marshal Yin, seeing Shingai pause, thought he had broken the wandering god's will. He launched the execution bolt. The bolt of celestial energy sped toward Shingai, illuminating his armored form just as the armor of transcendent sorrow began its ultimate transformation. The silver-white glow of the defense did not flare. Instead, it became completely, terrifyingly colorless, like a vacuum of emotion. The moment before the celestial bolt hit, Shingai opened his eyes. They were not filled with rage or sorrow, but absolute, focused emptiness. He did not block Yin's bolt. He allowed the energy to strike the outer layer of the armor. Then, Shingai unleashed the full power of the river's vengeance, sorrow, transmutation. It was not a blast of ki, nor a physical wave. It was a single, pure vector of condensed spiritual grief, an anti-cultivation strike. The projectile bypassed all physical barriers and spiritual defenses, cutting through the space created by the astral meridian lock. It was aimed directly at Marshal Yin's Dancian, the wellspring of his celestial authority. The shockwave of the sorrow transmutation was so profound, it only manifested as a subtle ripple in the air, instantly melting the astral meridian lock. The Jade Serpent Guards immediately staggered, the blue glow of their interconnected formation extinguishing as their power conduit Marshal Yin was struck. The celestial execution bolt, now uncontrolled, harmlessly glanced off Shingai's shoulder. Marshal Yin froze midair. He did not cry out, nor did he fall. He simply stopped, the authority draining from his form like water from a punctured vase. Shingai's attack had not been lethal. It had been precise. The sorrow transmutation had surgically targeted and disintegrated the core matrix of Yin's Danzian, rendering him incapable of channeling vast spiritual power ever again. Yin slowly descended to the ground, his midnight blue robes falling around him. He looked down at his unmoving hands, then up at Xingai. You transcended, Marshal Yin whispered, the cold calculation in his eyes replaced by a profound, terrible understanding. The final order. It foresaw your victory. It foresaw this exact method. He coughed once, a dry, rasping sound. I am defeated. The path is clear, Xingai. The Jade Serpent Guards, their formation shattered, stood paralyzed. Without their marshal, the chain of command was broken, their orders meaningless. Xingai lowered the Star Eater blade, the glow fading, the silence of the mountains returning. He turned his back on the defeated Marshal Yin, his mission complete. The last obstacle was overcome. He began walking toward the gate of silent ascent, the churning celestial void that marked the true barrier between the mortal and the divine. As he reached the obsidian rim of the gate, a voice, hollow, ancient, and incredibly vast, boomed from the chaos beyond. This was not Marshal Yin. This was the voice of the final order itself. Wandering God, you have proven your worthiness. The celestial court has waited. Xingai stepped through the boundary. The churning void did not consume him, nor did it resist him. He was instantly transported. As the thin air and volcanic dust of the mortal realm vanished, replaced by an atmosphere thick with vibrant crystalline ki, he stood upon a marble plaza the color of spun moonlight. Above, impossible structures of pure light formed the towers and palaces of the celestial court. But what drew his attention was the figure waiting for him at the center of the plaza. This figure was not armed, nor was it armored. It was small, clad in the simple, rough cotton robes of a mortal monk. The monk was seated on the ground, patiently waiting, radiating no power, yet holding the silence of the entire celestial court in his hands. Xingai approached him, the heavy metallic thud of the armor of transcendent sorrow echoing in the vast, silent space. The monk looked up. His face was deeply lined, his eyes clear and impossibly old. You have arrived, child of the river, the monk said, his voice quiet, conversational, and utterly terrifying. I am the grand architect of the celestial court. I am the one who issued the final order. Xingai stopped, the revelation jarring him to his core. He had expected the Jade Emperor, a god of war, or a council of elders. He had expected a final, impossible weapon, not a frail old man. The final order was not an execution, the grand architect continued, a small, sad smile playing on his lips. It was an invitation. Every battle, every challenge, every step of your path was orchestrated by me. The tragedy of the river, the creation of the wandering, God, even the vulnerability of your Dancinal by design. The monk gestured around the impossible grandeur of the deserted court. This place is empty, Xingai. The celestial court is dead, has been for centuries. The gods of this cosmos exhausted their power long ago in a war they could not win. The marshals, the guards, the prophecies all are mere spiritual echoes. Automated defenses and historical records, I maintain. I am the only thing keeping the illusion of order alive to protect the mortal. Realm Xingai finally understood the true meaning of the river of silent tears. The grief was not his alone. And why did you bring me here? Xingai asked, the question heavy with a lifetime of engineered suffering. The grand architect looked him directly in the eyes. Because this world needs a god who cannot be defeated, who cannot be broken, and who cannot be tempted by power. A god whose core is not authority, but sorrow. A god who is, in essence, an unstoppable, eternal guardian. He gestured to the plaza floor, where a massive, glowing, celestial seal was carved. The price of the armor of transcendent sorrow is that it only provides true, limitless defense when it is constantly absorbing grief. To stabilize the cosmos, you must bind yourself to the heavenly seal of eternal balance, a seal that requires you to continuously absorb the chaos, the pain, and the sorrow of all existence forever. You will be the silent foundation of reality, the eternal vessel of tragedy. The monk stood up, the ancient weight of the celestial court's responsibility settling onto his shoulders. The choice, Shinkai, is not to destroy or to be contained. The choice is to either walk away, letting the automated defenses fail and the cosmos collapse into war and chaos, or to take my place, to become the god of sorrow, to accept the ultimate eternal imprisonment that is the price of true transcendent guardianship. He pointed to the empty halls of the court. I am tired. I have held the line for too long. What is your final decision, wandering god? Shingai looked down at the starter blade, then up at the silent, endless sky maintained by the old man's sacrifice. The prophecy never predicted his final action, only his final location. The wandering god had finally stopped wandering. What would he choose? Freedom or an eternal, sacrificial watch? The fate of the cosmos hangs on this ultimate decision. Will Shingai accept the mantle of the god of sorrow, or will he finally claim his well-deserved freedom? Comment your final answer, like this incredible turn, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Storycraft Studio.